I started my career as a hardware firmware engineer working for a company called Instruments. We were doing protection and monitoring equipment for the telecommunications sector, and I've slowly sort of worked my way up from assembly language to web development over the years. And I now teach at Red River College. I teach back-end web technologies and some front-end stuff. And I'm also an artist, and I have a studio that I share with my father at the Art Space building, which is just kitty corner here. And we're actually having an open studio today and tomorrow, so if you have any time, from 10 to 5 both days, you can drop by Art Space, pop by the 5th floor, and you can see a printmaking studio. Online, you can find me as Stung-Eye pretty well everywhere, and I also have a website, stung-eye.com. And so, please turn on your mobile devices. There will be some aspects of today's talk where if you have a Twitter client on your mobile phones, you'll be able to interact with some of the bots that I'll be talking about. So pull out your phones if you want to participate. So our story starts about 20 years ago. I was in either junior high or high school, and a friend of mine, Sam, gave me a book called Foucault's Pendulum. It was originally written in Italian by a guy named Umberto Eco. It intrigued me because there was programming in it. There was actual code in it. This is one of the programs that was in the book. It's a basic program for creating anagrams. The book also contained a lot of really big words and European history that I knew nothing about. And so it took me 18 years to finish the book. And that was okay. So I finished it a few years ago. And in the book, there is a computer that goes by the name of Abulafia. And the computer was named after a religious philosopher from the 1200s named Abraham Abulafia. And in the book, they use this computer to create their own conspiracy theory. It's a group of publishers, and they're sort of inputting random bits of text into this computer. And they're having the computer make connections, basically just pull out random text that they've inputted and line them up together. So they put in information like the Templars have to do with everything, and Minnie Mouse is Mickey Mouse's fiancée, or sort of logical operators like what follows is not true. And they just sort of watch as it pulls out these random bits of information, and the conspiracy theory it ends up coming up with ends up happening to them. So around them, this theory that they're having created by this, what is effectively a bot, starts happening in their real life. And so when I finished this book, I was sort of on Twitter one day, and I noticed that the author of the book was on Twitter. And I thought it might be nice to create for him the bot that he wrote in the book and put it on Twitter. And so I wrote a bot that I named Abbotlafia, and I took as its source material the book Foucault's Pendulum, and I chopped it up into sentences, and I picked out all the sentences that were tweet size, so any sentence that was like 140 characters or less went into my database. And basically since then, the past 2 years now, Abulafia, between the hours of, I think, 10 in the morning and 10 at night, he goes to sleep. Between those hours, he tweets out random bits of Foucault's Pendulum, and he does fairly well with his followers on Twitter. He has 480 followers. People interact with him, people retweet him, they talk to him, he actually replies back. He has an interesting way of replying back. He just picks a sentence from his database of sentences that has the word you in it, like Y-O-U, so it seems very personal when he replies to you. And what I'm going to talk about today is basically how to create these kind of bots. And I'll be doing it in the Ruby programming language with a specific library, but I think it will surprise you as to how easy it is to create bots, and also how easy it is to fool humans into thinking that these bots are real. And so if you have a mobile device and you have a Twitter client on it, you could try tweeting out some of these phrases, and you don't have to tweet them to anyone, but if you tweet out the word inconceivable with an exclamation mark, or if you tweet out the word Beetlejuice 3 times, or if you say mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fill in the blank, anything you want to say, of them all, in a little while you'll probably get a response from an automated bot. I didn't write these bots specifically, but they were all written using the Chatterbot Ruby library. It was written by Colin Mitchell, and you can find him online. He's on Twitter at MitchC2, and he also has a website called Muffin Labs. And his library is the library that I use to write my bots. And so if you were to write a bot with Chatterbot, this library, you first need a Twitter account. So you create an account for your bot, give it a name, give it an @name. Then you install the Chatterbot library. So with Ruby, you use the gem install tool to gem install Chatterbot, and it then gives you a program that you run called Chatterbot Register. You run that program, you give it the name of your bot on Twitter, and it handles all the authentication. So it connects to the Twitter API, handles OAuth, which can be fairly complicated to work with, and it gives you a skeleton script, so it's sort of a starter for your actual bot code. And so what is coming up now is some programming code. So if you don't know Ruby, you can just assume that it's pseudocode. It's close enough. And I'm not going to get too specific on the code, but you'll see the code is fairly short. And so I'll sort of talk about sort of portions of the code and what they're doing. And so growing up, out at the lake, we had a long-wave, shortwave radio. And you could play around and listen to radio stations from all over the world. And some of those stations were these really weird stations where an automated voice would just read numbers, right? It would just be 2, 9, 8, and every once in a while, Foxtrot. And so here is they're called number stations, and I don't really know what they're there for. People say they're there for spies or something, or the KGB. But nonetheless, this is a number station that I've written bot. And so the code here, I'm requiring the library as the very top thing. This is sort of an infinite loop. At the end of the loop, it sleeps for 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes it's going to do something. And then this is the magic line right here. It runs the tweet command, which is hooked up to my bot. And it says tweet a random number from 1 million to 99 million. So every 5 minutes, a random number gets tweeted out. I don't have this bot hooked up on Twitter right now, but there are, if I can find it, a few other bots like this. So here's one called Gugun Staging, and it just sort of seems to tweet out numbers. I have no idea what they are. They seem to be sort of hex numbers. It's been doing this for a long time. It has over 250,000 tweets and 110 followers. 110 people get to see these numbers that appear every few minutes, I think. So I don't know if those people are very bored or whatnot. But you can see that writing a bot on Twitter doesn't take a lot of work. Once you've set up with the library, all you need is to run the tweet command and boom, you're publishing on Twitter. So I wrote a few bots for this presentation. I wrote one that would remind me not to procrastinate for making this presentation. So every single day, it would tweet me at 11 a.m. and say, you are presenting at B-Sides in N number of days. 5, 4, 3, that kind of thing. I started at around 30. And as you can see from when I took this screenshot, I took the screenshot 2 days ago. So it didn't have actually the best effect. I made my talk 2 days ago. Well, I was aware that the talk was coming. Every single day I knew it was coming. And I guess whoever was manning the B-Sides Winnipeg account, they also got a reminder every single day. Yep. And that was wrong. And so here's the B-Sides bot. At the top, I'm requiring the Ruby date library, and I'm just figuring out how many days it is between the current day and when the B-Sides day is. I exit the program if the number of days until the talk is less than 0. So if B-Sides has already happened, no more talking. And then I just put together a tweet. I say, Stung-Eye, you're presenting at B-Sides, and I might say today, tomorrow, or in a certain number of days, depending on that. And then I send out the tweet. So again, a very simple bot with very little code. Here's an echo bot. You can play around with this one. This one sort of is an example that came with the Chatterbot library. If you send a message to @echoes_bot, all it does is just send your message right back to you. And so the other bots sort of just tweeted. This one sort of replies to tweets. And so it has this reply structure where for every tweet it gets, it will find the user who sent the tweet and then take the tweet text and replace its own username with the user who sent it a message and then send that message right back to them. Another bot that I wrote for this presentation was inspired by the Neil Stephenson book Snow Crash. And in Snow Crash, the main protagonist has a sort of a digital avatar friend, the librarian, that does research for him. And so I thought it might be neat to have a Twitter entity that would do research for me. And so I made Lucky Librarian. And what Lucky Librarian does is you tweet a message to the Twitter message or the Twitter site at @finditplease, and it will reply to you with a link to the topic that you're asking about. And so I have a few examples here. Earlier today, I said, "Find it please, Twitter bots," and it replied with the Wikipedia link to an article on Twitter bots. And earlier in the month, I sent it the word B-sides, and it replied to the sort of a link to the main Security B-sides website. And so there's a little bit of intelligence here, or at least it looks like there's a little bit of intelligence here. Here's the code. It's a bit longer. I'm not going to go into full details here, but the giveaway is this line right here. What I'm doing is for every message that this bot gets sent, I just extract out the topic that the user is asking about, and I perform a Google search, and I just take the very first hit. I'm doing the feeling lucky sort of search, and so that's why it's the Lucky Librarian. So it finds the very first result on Google, and it sends you that back on Twitter. The last of the bots that I decided to write for this talk, I wrote for my buddy Sam. So Sam was the guy who gave me Foucault's pendulum back in high school, and who sort of started this whole journey into writing bots. Sam is a librarian, and he works in Edmonton for the University of Edmonton, and he is also a poet. So I thought it would be great to write a bot that would annoy him and watch him on Twitter, and every time he said anything that wasn't a retweet or a message to someone else, it would reply back to him in rhyme. So the very last thing it said, he said it would rhyme with that. So right when I turned it on, the first thing that Sam said was, "If you're fresh out of library school and need to learn the job as well, ... And the rhyme librarian replied, "C, for example, under L." And totally random, like the fact that it replied with like a library relevant tweet was sort of wonderful and interesting, and that's sort of why I love these bots, because the coincidences that occur are sort of magical. And then there was a bug in the bot. And what happened is it started tweeting Sam like ridiculous amounts of tweets. And I didn't fully debug my code until I turned it on. And so Sam asked me, he's like, "Dude, is Rhyme Librarian yours? If not, I'm blocking it." And the librarian replies to him, "If you can't figure that out for yourself, tough shit." And now it locked onto this blocking it phrase, and it starts saying things to him every 2 minutes, something that rhymes with it. It was just like hammering him. You can go on the feed and you can see like it's just going like crazy. I'm in class, I don't even know this is happening. And I get back from class and I see that the Rhyme Librarian is like sending out like 20, 30 messages to Sam, and I turn it off. So now the bot just replies if you message it. So I'm no longer annoying Sam, but if you were to right now send Rhyme Librarian a tweet, it would reply back to you, and because it just has a corpus of knowledge, it has like a database of phrases. It has phrases from the Communist Manifesto, it has phrases from The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith, to balance it out with the Communist Manifesto, and also Alice in Wonderland, just for weirdness. And so if you tweeted something and it has a rhyming phrase from this data set, it will reply to you. If not, it just ignores you. And so here's the code that went behind the Rhyme Librarian. And again, look at that. Not very much code to write a fairly complicated bot. In this one, I'm connecting to a database, the database of my phrases. I'm connecting to an API called WordNick that does word searches. So it's what tells me what rhymes with the last word of anybody's tweet. And again, I have this big reply block. So if I'm replying to a tweet, I find the username of who's talking to me. I do a little bit of pre-processing on the text. I find the last word by sort of splitting on spaces and finding the last word and downcasing it. As long as that last word isn't the link, so I look for HTTP, then I do a search on WordNick to find some rhymes. Then I have this find sentences method. I'm not going to show you that. That one just goes to the database and it looks for phrases that rhyme with one of the possible rhymes returned from WordNick. And as long as the data set that it got wasn't 0, it picks a random one, sends it back to you. And it also labels it as being tweeted in the database, so it doesn't repeat its phrases ever. That's probably the most complicated bot I have so far. Abulafia is a slightly more complicated as well. So why do I do this? Why am I so obsessed with creating these kind of Twitter bots? And the reason I do this is because I think as humans, we are contractually obligated to inspire each other. And we do so with inspiring each other's sense of wonder. And we can do this in person, and sometimes you lose this kind of ability to inspire people over the net because everything is so sort of mediated through technology. And so I like this idea of sort of leaving wonder sparks in the world. And this is like a little blurb that I wrote 10 years ago. I was laid off and I was trying to plant wonder sparks around the world. And so I wrote on my blog, what are wonder sparks, you may ask? Well, the best part is that they're anything. Anything that will stimulate the sense of wonder of your fellow man. So paint a picture on the side of a garbage can, or plant a tree in a strange urban location, leave a poem on a lunch table in sort of a random workplace, or ponder strange philosophical concepts with people you meet in the grocery store checking line. And so over the years, I've added ways to leave wonder sparks online, and one of them is just writing weird-ass Twitter bots. And so this is for Andrew. A few days ago, Abulafia tweeted out, "Besides, we have the logic of facts on our side." And Andrew Orr's been following Abulafia, and he writes back, "Besides, we have the logic of facts on our side." It's the new slogan. And because Abulafia will reply to everyone who messages it, he sends back to Andrew, "There is no difference between you and me." I'm not sure what that meant, but I think it's meaningful. I love doing this as well because a lot of people get it. A lot of people that are following Abulafia sort of understand what he's all about. They've read the book Foucault's Pendulum. Abulafia is a bit of a cyborg. So sometimes it's the bot, and sometimes it's me. And the me part is that I do a lot of the following. I'll search on Twitter for people who are mentioning the fact that they're reading the book Foucault's Pendulum, and I'll follow them with the bot. And then they'll get this eerie feeling, so they're just reading about this Abulafia, and suddenly on Twitter, Abulafia is following them. And if they message it, it will reply to them. So I've had a lot of good feedback from people who are just, here's one example. The fact that the computer from Foucault's Pendulum is now following me on Twitter pretty much sums up why I love the internet. So it's great. People have figured out, this person's freaked out. Like, if you're followed by Abulafia on Twitter, what will you do? What do you do when this freaky bot comes to get you? So I like that people get it, but I also like it when people have no idea what's going on. And so cats can read. This is a bit of an aside. I have a website where I've just compiled sort of all these photographs of cats reading or cats learning how to read. And I've got like hundreds of them. And I've been working on a bot that will find pictures of cats reading on Twitter and automatically retweet them. And because I was preparing for this talk, I thought I'd test it out last night. But instead of testing it out on the Meow Reader account, I thought I would hook it up to Abulafia and have him just start tweeting pictures of cats reading, just to see if anyone was paying attention, right? And supposedly Abulafia has 480 followers, but is anyone really watching what he's doing? And so I turned on the system, and there's a lot of pictures of cats reading on Twitter. And so in the 5-10 minutes that I had this on, it tweeted out like, I don't know, like 100 pictures of cats reading, just like one after another, boom, 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 boom. And I get this message where this guy that goes by the name of Rosen Sigil, he says, Abulafia, my go-to echo bibliomancy, go-to for bibliomancy, has turned into a machine for retweeting pictures of cats reading. Someone noticed. And then this is the absolute best part, that Abulafia replies, talking about why he's doing this. He says, to this, Abraham Abulafia dedicated his life, while your St. Thomas was toiling to find God with his 5 paths. So that's why he was retweeting cats. So some people get it, some people don't. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog, right? Or nobody knows you're a bot either. And there's been some really interesting conversations that he's had with people who don't get it. And so after saying, he sometimes says very spiritual things, and so after saying something fairly spiritual, this person messages him and says, we all need to learn that praise. Yeah. To which he replies, the manifesto doesn't say, it leaves you with your mouth watering. And this person replies, not understanding you. And the bot replies, you know where it comes from? It appears in the second treatise of the yes, this thing here, Cosmic Historia of Robert Flood. This is why it took me 18 years to read this book. This person still thinks that they're having a rational conversation with another human being. Who is Robert Flood? And the bot replies, what do you mean? We've sinned against the word, against that which sustains the world. And this person says, okay, ask and you shall receive. And the bot says, I couldn't get you at the office. This person then unfollows the bot, blocks it, and never interacts with it again. It's like, yeah, I'm out of here. You're trying to get me at the office? I don't even know who Robert Flood is. Sorry. So again, what are sparks? Or maybe just craziness. I don't know. Either way, I've affected someone around the world with an automated program. You might say that this person failed the Turing test. I don't think we would want to say that my bot passed the Turing test. Yes, it sometimes does fool people into thinking it's human, but I think really what this is that the Turing test is a really bad test. And so I think what's happening here is that humans, we want to believe that things are humans. We anthropomorphize, right? And so the other day I tweeted out, I knew this day would come. My bot, Abulafia, now has more followers than I do. And two of my followers were shocked that this thing was a bot. And so you might know some of these people here. Ben's in the audience somewhere here. And some of you, I'm sure, know Burke. Burke replied, I never clued in that that was a bot. I always assumed it was a student that liked to sound profound. This makes so much sense. And Ben said, that's a bot? I thought it was a real person. And because you do, you give the entities on Twitter the benefit of the doubt. You just assume that it's another human talking. And especially because he says such weird things, you would just assume that it was just a weird human. And so there's a bunch of research going on right now into actually trying to detect these kind of accounts. There's people, this particular project, they took 500,000 tweets and tried to analyze to see if they could determine who was a human, who was a bot, who was a cyborg, sort of half human, half bot. It's pretty easy to detect bots right now, right? Even just based on entropy. Humans are good at sort of tweeting randomly or tweeting during specific points of the day. A lot of my bots, they turn on at a specific minute, at a specific hour every day and do something like that. So just entropy alone, you can sort of figure out what's a bot or not. But I think that's just because we're in the beginnings of this. And I don't think it would be that hard to write bots that would fool these tests and fool all of us into thinking that they were humans. And if you see the spam bots that exist on Twitter right now, they're ridiculous. You mention a key phrase and they send you back a link. But imagine a bot that followed you, started up a conversation with you, got to know you over a while, sent you links, and it wasn't spam related at all, but every once in a while it pushed a product at you. Mentioned it really liked the new Samsung phone or something like that. It could get a bit of a gray area. They say these days the average Twitter user has only 35% of their followers are actual real human beings. The rest are like brands or organizations or bots. So how do we know? I'll just leave you thinking about that. Do you know if everyone on your Twitter follower list is actually a human being? Maybe not. So if you want any of the code, it's all up online. The bots that I wrote are all up on my GitHub account. You can go to github/stungeye. The repository is B-side bots. An early version of Abulafia is also up. The full version of Abulafia I haven't fully polished yet and released to my GitHub account, but you can see an early working version of him there. And also the Chatterbot library itself is up on GitHub. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed the talk. Thank you very much for listening. And if anyone has any questions right now, I'd be happy to take some. Woo! Any questions? Yep.
So these are obviously pretty long-lived scripts. What do they run on? So they run on some sort of persistent platform?
Yes, most of them are on, sorry? Oh, the question was that because these are scripts that are running sort of continually, what is the platform they're running on? So all of these bots are running off of a virtual private server, so it's just a Linux box, and they're actually all powered just by cron tabs. So I just have them set up as cron jobs, and they run at specific times a day. And that's also why they would sort of fail the entropy test, right? Like Tron, like the smallest resolution I can get on Tron is like 2 minutes or something like that. Any other questions? I saw another hand back there or not? No. All right, thank you very much.